Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Deep Penetration Podcast. My name is Danny, and today we are diving into the topic of jealousy, right? And this episode is called Jealous Much? Why Gay Men Are More Insecure in Relationships. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and to my other platforms. If you want to hear more content like this episode, I will also provide you with all the information in the description of this episode, including information for a free gift. It is the ultimate guide to dating for gay and bisexual men. You do not want to miss out on it. Again, it's completely free. You just have to go and get it, right? And I also offer free discovery calls, 20-minute discovery calls for individuals that are serious about coaching. So if you ever considered coaching or are interested as to how the process works, I would highly recommend checking that out. All right, so generally speaking, I think it's easy to assume that a majority of gay men are insecure and suffer from issues with jealousy and all of these things. And why do I say that? It often feels like the media portrays us to be these overly dramatic people who have this affinity for chaos. And the truth is, not all of us enjoy the drama and the chaos. And in fact, a lot of gay and bisexual men would prefer to have a stable and consistent relationship with someone and live their life in peace. But that being said, I have worked with many men over the years, and more often than not, an underlying insecurity that is affecting them and their relationship usually results in jealous behavior, right? But I want to be clear about something. Insecurity and jealousy is not specific to gay and bisexual men. It does not discriminate, right? So being that I am bisexual, I still work with heterosexual individuals who are struggling with their self-esteem and relationship issues. And more often than not, there is an insecurity that is present that is impacting their relationship, right? And here's what I believe. I believe the triggers and the root of our insecurities differ from those of our heterosexual counterparts, right? So we experience a level of repression and criticism and judgment and shame that affects our perception of self and how we fit in to the world, right? And this negative perception of self leaves a void that we are constantly trying to fill. There is this palpable pressure to be the best, to look the best, to perform the best, to speak the best. And many of us spend our lives trying to prove that we are worthy. So when we get into a relationship, those insecurities are on full display, which leads to things like jealousy. And there's a difference between jealousy and envy, right? And I think it's really important that we differentiate between the two, as they often get mistaken for one another, right? So jealousy is the fear of losing something or someone you value to somebody else. It usually involves three people, maybe more. And the person who is jealous, which is the partner, and the way that it's broken down is the person who is jealous, which is usually the partner, and then the person who represents a threat, which is the other person. Envy is the desire to have something that someone else possesses. And it usually involves two people, the person experiencing the envy and the person who has the desired attribute or thing that person wants. So what are some common misconceptions about jealousy and gay relationships? The first common misconception here is jealousy is more intense in gay relationships. And here's the reality. Jealousy can be intense in any type of relationship, regardless of the sexual orientation of the people that are involved. While some studies suggest that minority stress can contribute to higher levels of jealousy in gay relationships, it's not universally more intense, right? Individual experiences and personal histories play significant roles in the intensity of jealousy. So what do I mean by that? A person who has been cheated on multiple times before, a person who has been involved in a more toxic or traumatic relationship, an individual who has been made to feel less than or devalued in their relationship, whether it be friendship, romantic, familial. that can grow a level of insecurity that results in jealousy, right? That fear of abandonment, that fear of the person that we hold above all else walking away because we are not good enough. And the reason why we talk about, or I mentioned minority stress, is we as gay and bisexual men are considered a minority. And because we are considered a minority, there are certain stresses that we experience that other individuals do not experience, right? We still live in a society where, depending on your sexual orientation and depending on where you live, for example, within the continental US, you may not be able to express yourself. You may not be able to walk down the street holding your partner's hand. You may be tormented or hurt even for being gay or bisexual or lesbian or trans. So there is a level of stress that comes with that other individuals do not have to necessarily deal with. And it becomes more layered and more complex when you add in other minority groups to the mix, right? So for example, some people who are Black and gay, or Latino and gay, or Asian and gay, because then you also have to factor in the cultural pressures that come along with that. So that's why I mentioned that. The second misconception here is jealousy in gay relationships is mostly about sex. While sexual jealousy can be a component, it's not the only type of jealousy in gay relationships, right? There's emotional jealousy, there's fear of abandonment, and there's concerns about being replaced or not being good enough, which are also significant factors, right? Jealousy often stems from deeper insecurities and past experiences rather than just this sexual competition that I think a lot of people focus on. The third common misconception is open relationships are far more jealousy-free. No. And the reason why I say that is because open relationships are not inherently free of jealousy. Like that's a big common misconception. And I understand why the idea would be that it alleviates the jealousy factor because you're opening the relationship and you're allowing each other to explore and do all of these things. And while some couples in an open relationship may handle jealousy incredibly well, others may still experience a high level of stress due to the dynamic of that relationship, resulting in jealousy, right? The key is how you communicate your boundaries, how you trust and manage your emotions if you are in a circumstance or a situation like that, right? Open relationships require super strong communication. They require strong trust in order for you to be able to address any jealousy that comes up in that dynamic. I have worked with clients before that were convinced an open relationship was the right relationship structure for them and tried it and realized, oh yeah, no, this is not for me, because their jealousy went through the roof. They felt far more comfortable in a monogamous, closed relationship and had a level of security where their jealousy was able to remain at bay and they were able to work through their emotions and all of those different things, right? So it's really just kind of dependent on who you are as a person and what works for you. So what are factors that contribute to jealousy in gay relationships? I think one of the things that we have to talk about here is internalized stigma. And internalized stigma, if you don't know what that is, that's internalized homophobia. But as I mentioned in one of my previous podcast episodes, an individual commented and made a really good point about how internalized homophobia, utilizing the word homophobia, kind of perpetuates the stigma of shame. And so I did a little bit more research and realized that an interchangeable description for internalized homophobia is an internalized stigma. And that is what I've decided to continue to use moving forward. But internalized stigma basically refers to the internalization of societal anti-gay attitudes and prejudices by individuals who identify as gay or bisexual. So this internalized negativity can significantly impact your self-esteem. It can impact your mental health and behaviors within a relationship, right? So how can this create jealousy within a relationship? Lowered self-esteem, right? The root cause being internalized stigma can make you feel ashamed and unworthy of love and respect because of your sexual orientation. And the trigger for that might be when you feel inherently unworthy. You might believe your partner could easily find someone better or more acceptable, which is can trigger that feeling of jealousy, right? The other one here is fear of rejection. And what would be at the root of this one? Growing up in a society that stigmatizes homosexuality can instill a deep-seated fear of rejection, and oftentimes the trigger is this fear. Well, the fear would be the trigger. And then it could manifest into jealousy, with you constantly worrying that your partner might leave you for someone more socially acceptable or somebody who is less stigmatized. There's also comparisons and insecurities, right? So internalized stigma can often lead to you comparing yourself negatively to other people and believing you fall short due to your sexual orientation. And this comparison can make you hyper aware of potential rivals or which leads to jealousy when you perceive others as threats to your relationship. There's also previous relationship trauma. And this is a big one that I see in a lot of individuals who are experiencing jealousy within their relationship, right? Past experiences like cheating, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the episode, but if you've been cheated on, if you have been in a toxic relationship, those experiences result in you having this perception of the world and dating and the inability to trust, because when you did trust somebody, it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to. So not only is it about you not being able to trust somebody externally, it's also about you not being able to trust yourself internally, right? Because if I cannot make the right decision, if I cannot pick the right person, then there must be something wrong with me. Maybe I'm at fault to some degree. And most people handle that in one of two ways. They either completely deflect and it's not their issue, or they take an excessive amount of accountability, which can be toxic, right? It can be very triggering. And these experiences fuel those insecurities that really result in that jealous type of behavior. You may have never been a jealous type of person before, right? You're sitting here being like, I was never a jealous person. And somewhere along the line, something clicked and I started to become more jealous, and I don't know why. And a big part of this process is unpacking and understanding when that changed for you. Comparison culture is really, really one of the main contributing factors here. So where do we see a lot of comparison culture? It's on social media. And there's this tendency of people to compare their lives to other people's lives. And this can lead to this feeling of inadequacy. Look, I am somebody who obviously when you see me online, I am on social media as well. I'm having these conversations with you. I'm depicting certain things. I'm sitting here in a studio that's been arranged in a very specific way because it's meant to look a certain way, create a certain mood, all of those things. And while I try to make it as organic as I possibly can, this is fake. Right? Like this stuff is, this tree's fake. Like it's not even real. But the content and the information that I put out is real. The experiences are real. The discussions are real. The topics, the education, all of those things are real. And I hope that you feel that. I hope that you see that. I hope that you feel like you've come to understand who I am as a person, and my transparency and my vulnerability in these types of videos. But the reason for why I say that is because you see a lot of people out there on social media who are portraying these lives that are just not real, right? You see the behind the scenes stuff of like, these influencers who are flying on private jets every week, and really what they're doing is that they're renting one of those like set up private jet things where it's not even a real private jet, it's just like a set, and they're renting it for like an hour or two with their friends, and they're all going in on it, and they're taking pictures and videos of themselves on some private jet. Like, there's videos of individuals driving Maseratis and Ferraris and all of this stuff. There's videos of 18-year-olds buying mansions and all of this stuff. And the reality of the situation is that if they are able to do that, kudos to them. That's freaking amazing. Like, that takes a level of dedication and work and energy towards creating that type of lifestyle. But more often than not, it's super curated. So comparing yourself to these individuals is not worth it, because you see a lot of the times these people will portray this life for a few months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and then a video comes out of them, being honest and saying, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm tired of holding up this lie and creating this life that just doesn't really feel authentic and real and all of these things. So comparison culture has a big part to do with those insecurities, right? And feeling jealous in a relationship because you don't feel like you've attained that level of success, when in reality, you don't have to attain that level of success to be loved and wanted and desired and valued. Fear of abandonment. This is another big one too. And I think that as gay and bisexual men, we experience this in multiple different ways. So for example, I can give you a story about my own personal situation. When I was in elementary school, I got severely bullied, and I talk about this all the time. And I had a very, very small group of friends, primarily girls, not boys. I had 2 guy friends, I think. And one day, the group of bullies that always bullied me offered my 2 friends to join their group if they basically kind of abandoned me and just kind of left me behind. And they chose to go with the group. And for me, that really caused this internal like abandonment thing where it was like, oh my God, like I've literally just been abandoned by these people. Like, that really sucks. People that I trusted, people that I cared about, people that I thought had my back, but they didn't. There's more, there's deeper experiences that people have with abandonment, right? Abandonment from their families, right? When they come out, or you come out and your family turns their back on you or doesn't accept you for who you are as a person. Religious groups abandoning people and rejecting them for their sexual orientation or how they identify or any of those things. And that fear of abandonment is something that really becomes internalized. And it becomes subconscious. And when we put ourselves out there, and when we meet people, and when we interact with people, that little program is running in the background, right? And what that little program is doing is it's telling you that you are not valuable, that you are not worthy of these relationships or these connections. And because of that, individuals who experience that have a tendency of attaching even more. And that attachment in and of itself usually leads to that person feeling suffocated or issues within the relationship. And then inevitably that person walks away, and the abandonment wound comes right back up to the surface. And then there is excessive jealousy and insecurities and all of these things. And it's this vicious cycle that we experience, right? So what are some strategies? What are some coping strategies? What are some solutions that you can utilize to kind of navigate these feelings of jealousy? Open communication, right? Be honest. Be open, have open dialogue about how you're feeling, about your insecurities, about what your worries are with your partner or with your friends or with your family. Because the more you can have the conversation, and the more you are validated, and the more that somebody creates space for you, the more that you recognize that maybe it's not as big of a deal as you thought it might be. The second thing is building self-esteem, right? So practicing self-love techniques, affirmations, hobbies. Maybe there's certain hobbies that you've been wanting to do that you have not done. investing time and energy into doing those things, acknowledging your achievements, building a support network of people, coaching. Coaching is a great way to hold you accountable and get you on the right road to self-development and feeling confident within yourself so you can start to navigate your emotions in a more productive way. So if that's something that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with that. There's also other healthy coping mechanisms, right? There's meditation, there's exercise, there's nutrition. There's a ton of different things that you can explore. As I mentioned, there's coaching, there's counseling. So if coaching is not for you, there's also therapy. Therapy is a great way for you to start to unpacking the things that you need to unpack, especially if there is trauma that's attached to your insecurities and your experiences, right? As a coach, I am not licensed to walk people through trauma. I'm not a licensed therapist. And therefore, when I work with people and I feel like we touch upon something that is too sensitive for me to navigate, I will always recommend that you partner with a therapist or a counselor, right? There's also setting boundaries, right? So setting boundaries with when you suffer from jealousy can be incredibly difficult. But there are some ways that you can do it, right? So you want to identify the triggers and assess what your needs are, be honest about your needs, and be open to feedback. Set realistic expectations, and choose the right time to have the conversation with the person, your partner, the person that you're dating, whatever the case may be. Be specific about your needs, and be willing to compromise, because that's a really big thing here as well. Focus on your emotions, and practice a sense of self-compassion. That is really, really important here. I hope you found that to be helpful. Again, I know that was a very consolidated version of strategies and tips that you can utilize. Moving forward, I think that what I'm going to do in some of my episodes, it won't be in all of my episodes, but I think in some of my episodes, I will be far more focused on solutions opposed to just the educational factor, because I understand that we can have these conversations, we can talk about these things, and I think that they're all very important conversations, but what's the solve? What's the solution here, right? So I do have some YouTube videos out there where they're like maybe 5, 6, 8-minute videos. And it's, the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5 things that you can do right now to help your self-esteem and your self-confidence. So I have that content out there as well. But I think in the podcast episodes, it's really important to start to include more of these solutions for you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Deep Penetration podcast. I hope you found the episode to be helpful. If you did, please make sure that you subscribe, you share, and you leave a comment down below. And I will see you guys in the next episode.